Lauren kept being like, every time someone puts me on the spot in a panel and asks me a question, I literally forget everything. And I was like, oh, same.
Yeah. And that's definitely my problem as well. You're like, oh, we're recording now. And I'm like, cool.
Exactly. This past weekend was Onyx PathCon. Yeah, we were on a StoryPath Q&A panel together.
Yep, we sure were. That was fun. We had a whole 30 viewers.
We did. Given that it was at 11:15 or 11:30 on a Saturday for a less than popular game line, that's a pretty decent turnout.
Less than popular.
I mean, like the StoryPath game lines are not as popular as Exalted in the World of Darkness.
I know. I'm
not dragging it. I love Trinity Continuum. I wish it was more popular.
Same.
Yeah, I wish more people did it, but like 30 people showing up to the StoryPath Q&A panel, no less. Like, not even the like new announcements panel. That was just some designers answering questions. That's just the nerd crowd that wants to ask us weird shit like that.
Yeah, I missed the What's Up with Onyx Path panel, which I feel bad about, but
I missed it too. I had a guest this weekend, so I only recorded my
your panels. You didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't watch. I tried to watch some panels and I got easily distracted. Mm-hmm. It's hard to sit and watch panels all weekend.
Yeah. My guest and my partners have apparently put the panel on Twitch on the big TV downstairs, which is very sweet.
Aww.
They all watched me, which I thought was cute. They watched every single panel. It was very cute.
Aww.
Yeah. So, the Essence panel held steady at around 60 viewers.
That's pretty good.
That is pretty good. I don't know what the general viewership was like, but 60-ish people seemed to be the average for the two Exalted panels I was on.
Okay.
And so 30 for StoryPath, and for the StoryPath Q&A, I think is very respectable.
It's a good number. Yep.
Yeah, it's a good number. And I was pleased to see that of the 60 people who came, or the 30 people who came to the StoryPath Q&A, they were not just my friends.
Right.
Some folks I recognized from around the internet. It was nice to see some people.
Yeah.
See some folks who show up in the chat who I've only ever interacted with, like, on Twitter.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or that have only been around, like, I see you in the Discord.
Yep. It was fun to talk a little bit about 3rd edition, and then talk about StoryPath Q&A, and then answer some questions from the audience, a bunch of good, interesting design questions from them, and then revealing a bunch of stuff from Pillars of Creation. Which, like, you could have been on that panel, too. Not that you would have volunteered.
They did ask me to be on that panel.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
And you were like, no.
I was like,
too early, fuck that.
Yeah, a little. Not 2 days in a row, thanks. I need some sleep.
Yeah, I did one panel every day.
It's polite of you.
It was polite of me. They wanted me to do more than one, and I just was like, no. Welcome to Bonus Experience. How do I open my own show? I don't... You'd think after doing this bi-weekly for 5 years, I would have my own intro memorized. You would think, and yet Ray and I fuck it up all the time.
It's a show by queer women or people, not women. And you talk about systems stuff.
Yeah, that's the gist.
And people could die mad about it.
That's the high level summary. Yeah, that's basically the whole thing. We break the system shit down to the finer details of running and writing games. And we speak with authority about it.
Yeah.
We also swear, and that's what you can die mad about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's very important, the die mad part. We even have a sticker on our Discord that says die mad about it, fancy font.
Yes.
So Ray is dealing with a lot of shit right now. Oh, yeah. It's bad. So Dee's back in here as my co-host. Hello.
Hello.
So in the absence of Ray being here, Dee is here. We're gonna deep dive again, I guess. I did not deep dive. We didn't really plan this at all.
No.
This is really kind of an emergency recording, which our fans adore. So
I'm so glad you adore our nonsense.
Yeah.
I wanted to make a joke about deep dive. Be like, dive.
Like we're in a submarine. Yep.
We're submarine now. Yeah.
Oh boy. We're also both at the kind of at the end of our ropes. It's been a long weekend. We did a con like we just talked about. I did 3 panels and had a guest. I'm running on fumes trying to do this.
Yeah. Apologies from my end. I don't have an excuse. I'm just bad.
You're not bad.
I'm not good at this in particular.
Fine. That's why you're terrible at it. That's why I keep coming back to you as a backup host. You've tricked me.
Yeah, see, that's it's just because you're desperate. Desperation will lead you to anything.
I could pick a worse choice if I were desperate. I could make much worse choices. That's true. Please.
Oh man, don't make me think about who would be a worse choice.
Now I want you to. All right, so I polled a bunch of my freelance friends for what topic other professionals would really be interested in hearing you and I talk about, and they said a lot of things that we have already talked about.
Yeah.
That's true. But they also said they were really interested in hearing you and I talk about how to streamline systems, and I think I'll also throw in, because I've only ever done this like once. It was a big project, but I've still only done it like once. And so I think we'll sprinkle in on top, like, not just streamlining systems, but maybe also, like, homebrewing and making changes to systems that make them simpler. How's that sound? Because one leads to the other, really.
Yeah, that sounds like a great topic, yeah.
Okay, cool. So, we didn't outline this at all, or think about it ahead of time, or make a plan.
I'm looking at nothing.
We didn't do fuck all. So where do you think is a good place to begin talking about this? Normally in a BXP episode, we define what the fuck we're talking about. So, yeah, let's talk about what we mean when we say streamlining a system.
Sure. So, as you streamline a system, you cut out the parts of it, or you condense parts together that usually after play testing, or after a long time with the system,
right.
I could go in and streamline first edition Exalted, or go in and streamline. A bunch of people have done this. OSR folks have gone and streamlined like Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. It doesn't have to be with the intent of making a new edition, but with the idea that you're going to take a system, you're going to keep the bones of it the same, but you're going to take out the parts of it that either make it clunky, or the goal is to, make it less clunky, make it more accessible, take out subsystems that aren't vital to the system, and really make sure that you've just got yourself down to the bare bones of the game system.
I would agree with that. Sometimes it's not always to make things more beginner friendly, but I feel like that happens incidentally.
Yes.
At least if we're going to talk about Essence a whole bunch in this, because of course we are.
Yes.
But that was designed specifically for beginner friendliness in mind. I'm not sure if something like Shadowrun Anarchy was. Yeah, and I don't know that I would call Fate Accelerated specifically designed for beginners either. It's just an easier, stripped-down version.
I think, Fate's already a game that's, I think, a little bit easy for people who are just beginning to learn Fate. It's not a hard system to learn. And so I don't think you would need a design goal of, well, this is going to be easier for beginners because our game's already pretty easy. So we're just going to make it even easier.
I think Fate Accelerated is such an interesting example because, like you said, Fate itself is not hard.
No.
Though Fate is not easy either.
No. It's definitely a more complicated system than, say, Powered by the Apocalypse.
Is it though? I guess it is. Do we want to argue about this? Let's take a detour into talking about system complexity for a second, since we don't have an outline.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been sitting on this spicy take, and I've been meaning to drop it on the Discord, but my spicy take is that Sleepaway is a crunchy game, and someone's gonna poop their pants to hear that.
I haven't read Sleepaway, so
Sleepaway
I can't.
Is really good.
I can't poop my pants about it because I haven't read it. So I'm just gonna sit here with clean pants.
Okay, yeah, your pants will be safe. Sleepaway is just basically all mechanics, but all of it is storytelling mechanics.
Sure.
And so, like, the whole game is rules, and people will be very mad at me for saying that, I think. The whole game is rules, and they're really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay for, narrative permissions, narrative rules. Those are all still rules.
Yeah.
Just because it's not a die roll doesn't mean it's not a
rule. Yep. But anyway, so Fate, I would argue, has as many widgets and subsystems as PBTA. They are just presented in a more traditional way.
That's fair. And, I think that there's a little bit for playing. I think, roll 2d6, add a number, decide whether or not you succeeded or not. Pick off a list of move actions that you can do. Feels just dumb easy. But from the standpoint of somebody who's running a Powered by the Apocalypse game, I actually think it's more complicated to run one than it is to run Fate.
I have never run Fate, but I think you're right.
Well, I feel like for Fate, running and playing is very similar. The only thing you're doing as a game master for Fate that you're not doing as a player is you're offering bennies for Fate points. You're offering bad shit to happen for a Fate point, or you're offering an opportunity for a Fate point, compels, things like that.
Right.
And you can do that at the table as a player as well. Like, you can try to compel your buddies.
Yeah.
Aspects and stuff like that, and get Fate points or give them Fate points for doing that. And, it's a tool that everybody's accessing to, but it's really the GM's job to do that the most. And that's it. That's the biggest difference between playing Fate and running Fate. But for PBTA, whenever you're running PBTA, you've got to always kind of be thinking of what happens when there's a fail.
Yeah. Or, what is the most, not just what happens when there's a fail, but what is the most interesting way to succeed, but not quite. Right.
Because failure is supposed to be something that drives the story forward. Right? And you're always trying to drive the story forward. There's a lot of cognitive load on the person running the game to drive the story forward, even when this is what somebody's trying to do. How do I think of how they did that without actually letting them do that? And still make the story move forward. And sometimes it's easy, depending on, the game itself. Some games lend themselves to easier end results. Yeah. And some people are better at coming up with, what happens whenever you fail spectacularly. I think Blades of the Dark has that on lock.
Yeah, it does have, the positioning system in Blades really helps with that a lot, I think.
It does. It does a lot.
When you're running PBTA 2, there's also choosing what kind of move to make as the GM. Like, how punishing is your response, right?
Yes.
And also, at least in Apocalypse World, fronts.
Oh,
You have all your fronts to manage. The fronts are like a phenomenal mechanic. They're really, really good for organizing the world.
Right.
Just to tangent one more time, I also feel like not enough games give concrete direction to playing the world, which is part of being the GM.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, unless you're really running a character-driven game, which is usually just what I do.
Right.
Yeah. But even if you're running a character-driven game, like using the front things that give them moves for when certain things happen, or responses to certain actions, or anything like that, and what they do in the background while the players are not doing things, or while the players are doing things, everything keeps moving. And so fronts are really good for all of that. And you can even just do that for individuals if you're running a super character-driven game.
Yeah.
But that's a lot to keep track of.
It is a lot to keep track of. And, you gotta keep track of it. So yeah, maybe Powered by the Apocalypse style games are a little harder to run, but easy to play, where a Fate style game would be I mean, it's easy to begin with, right? But like, is it easier than Powered by the Apocalypse to play? I don't know. Is it easier than Powered by the Apocalypse to run? I'd venture to say yes, having run both.
Okay. I will defer to your expertise. I think you're right. Less off-the-cuff improvisation in Fate games, because that's... In Fate, you're not making any more improvisational choices than you were running, like, Exalted.
No.
Because all GMing involves making some degree of improvisational choice, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. As I thoroughly love to tell people when they're like, how did you plan all this? My answer is that I don't.
Yeah. Planning for game sessions is... Yeah.
That's for nerds. So we got off on this topic talking about streamlining things because we're calling Fate Accelerated mostly just like a cut down version of Fate, because Fate maybe doesn't really need the streamlining. And I think when a lot of people think about like streamlining a system, they're thinking about a maximalist, crunchy, traditional game like Exalted, like Shadowrun, like Pathfinder.
Yeah. Yep.
Name another one.
Dungeons and Dragons,
right? Of course. I was trying to avoid the obvious answer, but
look, sorry, I was just thinking like 4th edition D&D did Essentials,
yeah,
where they streamlined their own system halfway through,
yeah, and it was good and bad.
It was, yeah,
and the 4th edition Essentials were also intended to be an on-ramp for new people.
Yeah. Yep.
And I can attest from firsthand experience that was in fact successful.
Yes.
I had a friend who certainly could not keep track of a full 4th edition character, but really loved his little stance fighter.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so like, I guess we should maybe talk about what sort of goals are you looking at when you're streamlining a system, and like what sort of things would you want to cut down when you're looking at these systems? Like, would you streamline PBTA?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could streamline PBTA, and I think people have tried, and they just end up with different games.
Yeah, fair enough.
I feel like it is a more streamlined game than other game systems, which is why a lot of people talk about it a lot. Mm-hmm. I think the thing to do to streamline, in my opinion, personal opinion here, don't take me, this is not gospel.
Okay.
Is to identify pain points with the system. Where do people stumble? Where do they have the issues? When people are playing the game, what are their barriers to making characters? What are their barriers to playing the game, running the game? What stops a person from fully enjoying this game the best way possible?
Yeah.
And that's hard to identify sometimes, especially if a game is brand new, or if you're making a brand new system, right? You just be like, well, I'm going to take all the good stuff from all the other systems I've ever played and smash together, and I'm going to make this new system. But you may do it in a way that creates pain points, and you don't realize it. Not until it's been played for 5 years, and everybody's like, God.
God, this one subsystem just, once we get to it, it just takes me right out of it.
Right.
Yeah, and sometimes those subsystems aren't bad. They're just over-designed or incongruous with the rest of it. Right.
Like, I would, it's blasphemy to say bad things about something like Blades in the Dark, but I would say that Blades in the Dark has some pain points in it that...
Oh, I would agree.
The creator, designer clearly wasn't like twirling a mustache, being like, let's make this so fucking difficult, nobody can engage with it. Like, of course not. Like, that's never anybody's plan. But here we get, I think the damage system in Blades of the Dark is just too punishing.
Yeah. I think I would agree. You've already heard my feelings about stress.
Yes. I like stress as a mechanic in Blades of the Dark, but I also understand your points on it.
My big thing is that, for anybody who hasn't heard it, I'm going to recap sort of my two big problems with stress. And one of them is that it's not enough of a risk-reward system.
Right.
It's very easy to play it safe, which is not the point. In fact, I made it through a whole game, never once risking a trauma. Just because I understood how math works. And, I get that you're kind of not supposed to do that, but I really want a system to trick me into gambling. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Like, it doesn't matter if I understand the math. You want to present me with such an incentive that I want to make the risk, right?
Yep.
The system should trick me a little into wanting to engage with it.
The reward is worth it enough to you.
You're right. And the rewards that were there were not strong enough to risk I'd have to end playing this character I really like.
Right.
Or have them be permanently damaged in a way that maybe I'm not going to be into.
Right.
And this is not me saying I'm not into the drama of characters being damaged or not coming out the other side, the whole or whatever. Like, that's good, gripping, gut-wrenching drama, right? But, like,
Yeah.
I want that to be a change that I choose.
Right.
And I want that to be a change that I'm excited about, right? Like, if I'm going to slip into corruption, I want to be excited about it.
Right.
I want to cheer for my character becoming worse. I can make her worse. I want to be excited about it.
Right.
And so I don't think there was enough incentive offered to risk the end result. Because getting trauma is just bad, and then too many of them just removes your character, and I'm usually very attached to my characters. I'm not interested in losing them. I want to see them through to the end of the game.
Right.
It's just not a thing I'm into. Then that is a taste thing, and I understand that. The other thing is that because it's a resource that fuels a bunch of other things, having to spend it to help other people disincentivizes helping other people, and that is bad in a heist game and a criminal gang game.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that is directly at odds with that. Like, even a hive of scum and villainy, there's honor among thieves, right? You work with your crew. They're your buddies. It's all about teamwork. And so kind of punishing that, I think, is bad. And so those are my two big problems with it. Otherwise, it's fine.
Right. I think my bigger problem with Blades in the Dark comes from running it, which is that there's some push and pull between what the players want to do and what the GM is doing. And there's a lot of cognitive load on the players to set up their next score, right? It's all on the players to decide what are we doing next. And clearly there's input from the GM, but without a strong lead and without a strong hand, it can become very confusing very quickly, or very like, I don't know what we do. What are our options?
Right.
Oh, we're gonna, somebody wants us to go steal something for them. Okay, we could do that. But then after that, and we've turned that in, if we don't have another job ready, what do the players decide to do? And sometimes they just sit around going, I'm stumped. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I could do anything in the world, and that's too many options.
Yeah, that's legit. I have no arguments there. Can we think of a subsystem or something from another game that's not Blades that's honestly a fine mechanic but sticks out like a sore thumb in the context of the rest of the game? And I'm going to try to think of one that isn't an Exalted example, but is almost certainly going to be an Exalted example.
So, I'm going to get a little blasphemous here.
You know what? I called Sleepaway Crunchy earlier, and that was the foot we started off on, so get blasphemous. This will be our controversial opinions episode.
So, the mechanic for feeding in Vampire the Masquerade.
Okay, which vampire are we talking about? The Masquerade?
Any of them.
Any of them? Okay.
Any of them. I know how V5 handles feeding or hunger. Like, there's those hunger dice, and then the more you roll, the more hungry you get, and then you've got to go feed, right? But the concept of feeding, even though should be a major part of being a vampire in a vampire game, literally goes from, I'm doing all of these action things that are very personal to my character, and I'm doing all this personal drama stuff, and then I'm just going to, like, feed over there really quickly. Get that done. Get it out of the way. Make a roll for it or something, and then come back.
Right.
And it's just like, wait a minute, what?
I just need to just little sippies, restock on my blood supply.
Right. And so it's either that, or it's, this long drawn out hunting scene that everybody else has to sit around for while you're, digesting a human. And that might be a little too horrific. And I don't know, like, just the concept of feeding in vampire games, it's so clunky. And in my opinion, that sticks out as like a weirdness every single time it shows up.
Yeah, I'm trying to, like, that feels to me a little bit like resting in D&D.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna do it. I'm not gonna make an exalted example. So like, and I'm gonna talk about 4th edition, but 5th edition also included the short rest, which is from Tori, which is a good bit of design tech, right? Like,
sure.
But it's treated sort of with the same care as like feeding in Vampire, right? Like, we all know the vampire thing is like you're supposed to be engaging with the horror of I have to drink another human's blood, blah. But we all know that the fun of being vampires is being sexy Draculas, and that part is like, yeah, whatever. Like, I get that that's supposed to be the horror part, but nobody cares. Like, except in like an erotic or homoerotic way. And then like, you know, that then the people are kind of into that scene, right? But you don't want to have a sexy vampire feeding scene every game.
No.
And so it's what it really is in Vampire the Masquerade is a way to get your power back, right? Like, you gotta have your blood points. Gotta have my blood points.
Yep.
And so that syncs up with the idea of resting, right? And dick-ass GMs will also make feeding a problem, right?
Right.
And dick-ass GMs will also make resting a problem. And both of these are supposed to be mechanics for you to get your powers back and sort of create the sense of being a vampire or being an adventurer who is in a dungeon or out in the wilderness, right? You're pushing yourself as a D&D adventurer, you know, you're pushing yourself. You're fighting these monsters. You're trying to recover treasure. You're, you know, exploring and all that stuff. And you have to take time to rest so you can keep fighting. That's supposed to be part of the theme. But what it is a forcible timer on how often you can do things.
Yep.
And I feel like both of them hit the same thing where it's like, no, you need to have time to refresh, but what it becomes is a thing that we ignore so that we can continue to engage with the part of the game that's interesting.
Right.
So if you were to streamline Vampire, would you remove rules for feeding?
Entirely.
What would you replace them with?
I don't know. I will say that I think that V5 has done a good job of streamlining feeding into these hunger dice that feels a little less clunky to me than, say, the previous editions did.
Here's my thought, and I'm not a vampire expert at all.
Sure.
I think you could probably make feeding sort of like a recovery scene from Essence.
Yeah.
Or from Lady Blackbird, where it's just a montage and you just refresh yourself, right? Like,
right.
And you can just make it a thing that you can cut away to if you want to. The recovery scenes in Essence, which are from Lady Blackbird, are always optional, but they get you your stuff back.
Right. And
you don't... In Lady Blackbird you do, but that's because Lady Blackbird is almost an entirely narrative game. I wouldn't streamline Lady Blackbird, it's already very streamlined. just to stay on topic. But, like, you don't ever have to participate in those things if you don't want to. So if you gloss over them or just are like, yeah, I go off and I seduce a hot babe and then I drink her blood, that counts, right? And so you're not ignoring a system if the system itself is just montage it, right?
Right.
That seems like maybe the best choice to me, off the top of my head.
Yeah, and yes, that would be where I would put it, in like a short description. Yes, you do the thing because you described it. Now we're done.
Right.
And, you know, there's definitely opportunity for feeding in particular to go wrong. But I feel like that's something that players could engage with if they want to. They could say, like, you could have the streamline mechanic be like, you know, where do you find your blood? You know, who do you feed on? And what is the result of that? And then people have to answer, like, who do I feed on? I find some hot chick in a bar and I feed on her in the bathroom. And like, is the outcome good or bad? Be like, you know, it could be every single time I feel like, oh, the outcome's fine. I don't feel like dealing with consequences. But it could be that, you know, like, somebody busted in on us and I had to deal with them. And like, you did deal with them. But now maybe there's a story hook for the story guide or, storyteller. Gotten lost in the stories.
Story asterisk.
Story.
Yeah.
So the storyteller to say, oh, well, maybe the person you took care of, you know, you didn't kill him, right? Because that has some other consequences. So you beat him up or you knocked him out or whatever, and now they're looking for you. They're looking for the person who was munching on a woman in the bar, they don't know what you are, but they think you're dangerous, right? And so now here's a story hook that I've provided to my storyteller because I wanted to, and I wanted to engage in that. And I think that would be a really nice, and I'm talking about Vampire World of Darkness, thinking about all the additions before V5, because I haven't played V5, so I don't want to say that like I know exactly how it handles those scenes anymore, because I don't. I know in general how it happens. So, if there's somebody out there who's going to be like, but D, that's exactly how V5 handles it, then like, great. Perfect.
Great. Fantastic. Then we're happy. Yeah, I also don't know very much about V5 at all.
Yeah.
I have a credit in a V5 book, but I don't know very much about V5 at all.
Yeah, I would venture to say that's not how V5 handles it, knowing who worked on it.
Yeah, I think it's a good bit more visceral and upsetting than that.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the point.
Yeah.
I'm not going to argue that, but I think we came across a pretty good example. And similarly, I would recommend that resting in D&D works similarly to recovery scenes in the same way, where like, and leaning even more into the idea of the recovery scene from Essence, which specifically says like, you take some downtime, you describe your characters kicking back and relaxing. You have to do something that's not related to your current venture. So you could talk about like your dwarven fighter who makes, monster stew for everyone.
Yeah.
And then everyone enjoys a hearty meal around the fire and tells dirty jokes and drinks all night, right? And that's your rest scene. And then maybe everybody role plays a little bit and you get the really delightful part of like, yeah, everyone was in character and we were making jokes and it was really fun and it was sort of a very immersive scene. Not a single person touched a die, right?
Yes.
The thing that people like to brag about all the time. And if you can create that situation as part of a subsystem, because like a recovery scene is a mechanic in a subsystem, even if there's no dice rolling involved, that's still a thing, then you have very successfully had people engage with part of your game.
Yep. As opposed to ignoring the rules of the game so that they can get to the stuff that is more fun.
Yeah. Bonus experience. And our mid-episode break are brought to you by the Misdirected Mark Network. Ray is not here to go bing, so I'm going to have to do it myself. Don't forget that we have a Patreon. You can become a BXP patron. We hang out in our Discord. There's a private room where patrons get to just chat with us directly. The Discord, just to be clear, is public. Anyone can join it. Anyone can come hang out. There's just a special space for patrons where you get our attention specific. We also have a bunch of special roles if you back us at different rates. We try to do exclusive hangouts, though we've both been really, really busy since both of us got a new job that we work at together, and that's kept us pretty well busy. But sometimes I play video games and stream, sometimes Ray plays video games and stream, sometimes we do stuff with the community. I once organized a whole Malifaux tournament with everybody. It was really fun. So occasionally the community does stuff together, and that's a great time, and if you're with us, you can join. And you can support us for as little as $1 a month. If you give us $20, we will make you a terrible certificate that certifies you as a Margaret. All you gotta do is give us $20 for 1 month, and the worst graphic design you've ever seen can be yours. And if you would rather support BXP but don't like Patreon for a variety of understandable and legitimate reasons, you can subscribe on Ko-fi instead, ko-fi.com/bonusexp, which will net you all of the same rewards. Or you can go buy our stuff. We have a whole merch page on our website. Go to bxpcast.com/bxpswag and check out our merch page. And don't forget that you can also buy things from Nerdy Kepi because they have sponsored us. It is Pride Month. Get yourself some queer swag. Nerdy Kepi has so much cool stuff. If it's a piece of clothing for a part of your body you can think of, they have it. And they have it in a variety of pride flags. Pick your favorite gender, sexuality, expression, whatever. Get yourself a shirt. And don't forget to use code BXPcast to checkout for 10% off, which never expires. So if you're like, man, those cool, I got myself a pair of bisexual house slippers. They were kind of expensive and I want another pair. You can come back and use the same code later and get yourself a second pair, or a really gay button down. Both of which I own. And always remember that saying nice things is free. You can leave us a good review on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever, and help us get more listeners. Lastly, if you like bonus experience, you will also like Bone, Stone, and Obsidian, Jesse and Robert take monthly deep dives into the Dark Sun setting and discuss it across all editions of D&D. Maybe we should talk about... We did talk how.
to do?
Yeah, let's talk about how. We talked about what and why. Let's talk about how.
Oh man, talking about how. So I go back to identifying pain points, and that's really the only way how to do it is to know what is a pain point. And it doesn't have to be this doesn't work. It doesn't have to be this doesn't, function properly, or this causes people headaches, or, that mechanic, that subsystem gave my girlfriend a migraine. It could be. I can't imagine what subsystem that is, but that's my example.
It was the entirety of the Witcher RPG.
Oh,
which I got specifically for Julia, who is my girlfriend.
And that's why she has migraines.
That's not why she has migraines, but...
Oh, no.
But she definitely read it and was like, oh... oh, this sucks. And I was like, yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was from 1998, but published in, 2017?
Yeah, there's so many good elements to it as well. Like, I read through it and I went, oh, this is a really clunky game. I'm sad. It could be like, man, let's talk about streamlining The Witcher.
Yeah, but I don't know it well enough to actually answer that question, other than that I opened it up and I read it and I flipped through it while Julia flipped through it, and I just sort of watched her get progressively sadder.
Oh yeah. Well, I only read it the one time, and I read it in depth because I was going to run a game of it, but then I realized character creation was both fun and not fun. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I thought of was how do I fix character creation so that this isn't unfun for my players?
Do you remember any of your ideas?
Well, I was going to flatten the point buy system because it uses a point buy system that punishes you for not going deep early, where the XP later scales.
Oh, God. Man, White Wolf Games got this wrong so often, and you should know better.
Yeah.
By 2017, you should know better. God.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a problem that Exalted has all the way up to Essence.
Yes, it is. It's a problem everywhere.
Stop doing that. Stop making things cheaper at character creation than in the long term. Either make the costs exactly the same, or do a flat rate character creation and then flat rate XP.
Right, but it's flat rate is just so good, and it's so easy to just say okay, well, what's the total you'd have to spend to get from 1 to 5?
Right.
Divide that by 5, and that's how much everything costs each individually.
Right.
And not have that be graded oh, well, 1 is 2, and 2 is 4, and 3 is 8. Stop it.
Right.
Just stop it.
Stop
right now.
Stop.
So I definitely would flatten that out, and that's pretty easy to flatten. Mm-hmm. The life path system is heckin' cool otherwise. Yeah. Oh yeah, you go through and you make all these life choices about your character from birth to now, and every time you make a choice, you add a point somewhere, or you add an ability, and that's a fun way to make a character.
Yeah, that is.
It's a super fun way to make a character. It was just the math behind some of it was I'm reading, and then ow, why? This was so good, and then so
yeah.
Not to shit on The Witcher.
No, I mean our Talisaurian are very, very lovely people.
Yes, and the game is playable. It's fine. It's just I would streamline the shit out of it if I had it to do.
Yeah.
Because I feel it does have some pain points, and some of it I think is not their fault. Some of it I think is cleaving to a video game standard.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very fair. I got that vibe when I flipped through it.
Yeah.
Let me see. Through the Breach, that's a game I can talk about that
yeah.
That could use some streamlining. Holy shit. And it's a game I really like, just to be abundantly clear.
Yeah, just because we're talking about streamlining a game doesn't mean we don't like these games. In fact, I would want to streamline a game because I like it. Mm-hmm. So don't nobody out there be like, Dan, Dee, and Monica were just shitting on all these games. Anyway, Through the Breach.
Yeah, Through the Breach. Through the Breach is a game with 60 skills.
60?
60.
That's like 50 too many.
It is. It is 50 too many. And it's 50 too many in a way that drives me up a wall, because in the wargame, characters have 6 stats? 8 stats. 6 or 8 stats. And in 3rd edition Malifaux, it's even less. But in 2nd edition, there was casting, shooting, melee, and then defense, willpower, charge, walk, size, right? So I was like, why didn't you just have player characters put points into casting, shooting, melee, defense, willpower, walk, charge?
Right. Why didn't you just have the same stats as you did for the miniatures game?
Exactly. No, we have a melee category which has 5 sub-skills underneath it. So if you want to be good at flexible weapons, you are not also good at heavy weapons.
Oh my goodness.
Which I suppose is, air quotes, realistic, but we're talking about a Weird West steampunk dreadpunk game where people are literally magic and there are, like, hot demon people and there's a breach to another reality and magic rocks come out of the ground that give people magic powers. So, like, did it need to be realistic?
No!
No, of course not. Like, this is a game where one of my favorite characters is an undead lesbian who controls time. Come on.
Come on.
Like,
there's no real lesbian who could control time.
Maybe there is, and we are all at the whims of the lesbian who controls time.
Sorry, it's just the idea of that.
I also got derailed by that idea as well. But yeah, so like there's no need to be hyper realistic, and like it's also a game where it wants you to like investigate a mystery and like talk to people. So all right, notice. That probably should be on your skill list. Persuade. Sure, yeah. Intimidate, because it's definitely a game where, like, might makes right, so an intimidate skill makes sense. And maybe some movement skills, because moving around on the board is important to the wargame. Right. So, like, an athletics skill for how good you are at climbing up shit, right? Or not falling down. But, like, I see a valid reason for, like, a climb shit, stay balanced type skill, right? Especially since you're talking about a game where terrain can matter. So if you're, like, doing a tense scene where everyone is fighting on this rickety bridge over a gorge, right? Like, you want to have, like, a skill to make sure that people don't make an athletics check to not fall on your ass, right?
Right.
And so I definitely could see spaces where the skill list could have been fleshed out in certain places beyond just the stats in the wargame. But we got 60 fucking skills, which include academic skills, like mathematics is one of them. Why do we care about math in a game about being magic cowboys?
We shouldn't.
Yeah, we shouldn't. Okay, fair. Politicking is also an important part of, like, the lore, right? Like, there's a bunch of factions. They fight with each other. The guild is a bureaucracy and a world-spanning evil organization, right? Like, you can work for them. So, okay, maybe there's the bureaucracy or politicking skill. That would make sense. But we're still only at, what, like 12? Even adding these other things on top of the skills from the game? And in the BXP episode about skill lists, I talk about how your skill list should tell me what your world is about and what your game is about. And streamlining that is one of the first things I would do if I was handed the ability to make a streamline Through the Breach.
Right.
And one of the other things is that the character creation, I thought of this because you were talking about the life path. Through the Breach character creation is awesome. It's super fun. But one of its big problems, because you do like a tarot reading for your character, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But it does randomize everything about your character, which some people like and some people don't, flavor to taste. And for each tarot card you flip, it creates a random array for your stats.
Oh,
and some of them are bad.
Oh.
There are some results that are just worse than others, and that's not good. Don't do that.
No, don't do that.
So a couple of the times that I've house ruled that, I've just been like, So we're gonna do the tarot reading, because you get what are called fate lines, which are a bunch of random ominous phrases. And you have to have your fate lines because you basically level up by resolving your fate, whether you interpret it and going along with it, or whether you interpret it as a resistance, right? Like, and they're all good and creepy, and you get this, like, real ominous prediction about what'll happen to you, and you have these 5 lines that you have to fulfill, and then you can basically retire your character when you hit the last one, because there's there's nowhere else to grow from there.
Sure.
You can still gain XP and, like, get stuff, but, like, you fulfilled your fate, there's nothing further to do. And I will say from firsthand experience, it takes quite a lot to fulfill all your fate lines. So you have a lot of campaign ahead of you. This is not something you rush into. But it's phrases like, when you hear the silver bell ringing from across the land, you will look death in the face, and you will know real terror. It's shit like that.
Very nice and ominous.
Yeah, and so, like, you might be in an adventure where you're running from zombies and you hear, like, ominous church bells ringing in the background, and you choose not to go towards that sound, and you run away from it, and then you consider that the resolution of your silver bell line, which I just realized is I didn't do that on purpose.
It jangles.
It jangles. Fuck. Yeah, so one of the things I have done was keep the tarot reading where you just give someone their spooky lines, but just pick an array for your stats, because there's no, like, I don't see any point in having one character who got the good result and one character who got the bad result. This is also why I don't like rolling for stats.
Right.
Unless, like, I can understand a rolling for stats or a flipping for stats or a randomized stats where the stats are not that important.
Right.
If like, failure isn't really that important. Again, that I don't know why we're playing a game with randomization, but I can see it there if it's not that big a deal, or if the difference between them isn't that huge, right? Like, if a 0 or a 1 isn't that much big of a difference, then I guess it's fine. But most of the time it just feels bad, man. I don't like it.
Right.
And there are lots of other systems in Through the Breach that I could talk about streamlining, but I would really want my books in front of me, and they're not here right now. So I'm just going to talk about those 2 for the moment.
Yeah. So, again, how do we do that? That was what we were supposed to be talking about.
Yeah, it was what we were supposed to, but we did kind of demonstrate it in that, like, you talked about examples for how to streamline the character creation in Witcher, and I talked about examples for the same with Through the Breach, like cutting the skill list down to a bunch of things. And you could still house rule in the restricted, the shorter skill list, you just would have to make off-the-cuff choices for which of your new skills can be used from published material if it calls for something else, right?
Right. And I think bringing it back to how to streamline, it's really, like I said before, about cutting out the stuff that makes it, subsystems that make it harder, or like you said, like a skill system is not a subsystem, right? Like it's taking a skill system from 60 skills down to, say, 10 really good skills, or, maybe 15 really good skills is a bit of a chore, but it's worth doing because of the streamlining that you would get out of it, where you combine a bunch of skills into one, or you remove all the sub-skills from skills and see, essentially condense them all down into one thing. You get down to, your ideal number of skills where it's less clunky. And by clunky, I mean, I don't have to remember and think about 60 different skills.
Right.
And that's a lot of cognitive load right there. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if they're all on your character sheet or not.
Right.
I think Alternity is a skill-based game, and I don't know how many skills it has, but I don't think it's 60. And that's like a game from the 90s or 80s.
Yeah. I know that Gumshoe also has a lot of skills, but I also know that you don't always use all of them. Have you ever played a Gumshoe game?
I haven't ever played a Gumshoe game. I've read Gumshoe through, I think I was reading Night's Black Agents. Mm-hmm. And just the system, though, because I wanted to get a feel for what Gumshoe looked like. Mm-hmm. And no, you don't use all the skills all the time. And your skill points are actually like rerolls, or they're like freebies. Not freebies, but like you spend a point to get a thing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't roll on it.
Yeah, and I think you tailor the list of those to what is important to the investigation parts of your game. It's just a big comprehensive list, and then I think you narrow it down.
Yeah. I think so too, but it's been a while since I read through it.
That is my recollection. I may be wrong, and I'm sure someone will tell me. So I guess to continue to demonstrate the point, I suppose we'll talk about what everyone wants me to talk about.
Quite exalted.
When we were doing kind of the planning phases of Essence, one of the first things I did was ask a bunch of people who had way more experience with the system than I did what things they didn't like.
Yep.
And it was a pretty broad, I cast a pretty wide net of differing opinions to kind of get a pretty comprehensive idea of the stuff people didn't like or had trouble with, or liked but it was incongruous, or other things that they had complaints about. And some things were worth fixing, and other things were like, it's manageable.
Right.
So, of course, the big one is initiative.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of bookkeeping. It can be really challenging for storytellers who are approaching it for the first time because the numbers are so big. And everybody's moving around all the time, and having more or less initiative changes the order in which you go. But it is also a very crucial resource to doing anything in a fight, and then you can run out of it and then be in a death spiral. And a lot of the critiques that I had seen from people accurately pointed out a lot of things that were troublesome about that system.
Yeah, it's enough bookkeeping to where the first time somebody ever tried to run Exalted 3E for me, we were very excited to play Exalted. Very, very excited. Exalted's happening. We got into one combat, and it was a little clunky. We weren't doing it right because it was our first time.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next game we played, we got into another combat, and it was still clunky, and we weren't doing it right. And then we stopped playing because the person running the game was like, this is too much bookkeeping. I don't like it. I don't want to run this anymore.
Yeah. My spicy take is that Exalted already had a really good dynamic initiative system, and that was ticks.
Yeah.
Had second edition already did that pretty well, and that perhaps attention should have been paid to solving second edition's actual problems because the moving initiative wasn't it. However, in one of the really earliest iterations, Neil was like, well, I want you to make Exalted Initiative, but for Scion. And that was the first instance of power, which had a different name, and was in a design document that never actually got put into Scion at all. Which would have been weird, because this was well after Origin and Hero was done.
Oh, weird.
But it was basically a system where you gave yourself a condition called advantage, and the more advantage you had over someone, the more you could spend it to, hit them harder and stuff like that.
Sure.
And that concept became power. And power was made more or less directly to address a lot of the issues that people correctly identified with initiative, which is that moving around is a pain in the ass, so we separated it from that, and that, the numbers were just too damn high. So we spent a lot of time streamlining and properly adjusting the numbers to be this build to a crescendo strike, build to a crescendo strike, build to a crescendo strike. And it works phenomenally, if I do say so myself. We spent a lot of fucking time trying to get that right, so god damn it, I'm proud of it. And one of the other things that we streamlined, which isn't really a subsystem, but is a thing that you should bear in mind if you're going to house rule or consider streamlining, is that we condensed a lot of stuff because we wanted the character sheet to be smaller and much easier to read. So it went from 9 attributes to 3, from 25 skills to 14, and then cutting down, you only ever calculate defense once. It's either your evasion or your parry, and that's your defense, period. You have one social resistance stat, and so all of that you can theoretically put on a 3x5 card. And that was, you're gonna need somewhere to track your charms. That's no two ways about that, but the basics of your character should fit perfectly onto a small space, right? And that was the goal.
Right.
And then we added more virtues.
But I think, I think that subsystem could use, it is not a streamline because I think intimacies were already kind of made streamlined.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it helped with the social stuff to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Because sometimes less is more and sometimes less is not more.
Yes.
And I think intimacies falls in a range of less is not more. And specifically in third edition, intimacies are very free form. You just come up with an intimacy, and now this is the thing, the tie that you have, or the thing that you care about, and you have a bunch of them, and there's this whole system about them, but it could be anything. And anytime it could be anything, people go,
Yeah. Yes. And what the virtues do that streamlines that is that they just replace defining intimacies.
Yep.
So, like, defining intimacies, I think, are fine, right? I actually
Yep.
don't have any problems with third edition's social system. So if anybody thought I was changing it because I hated it, that's actually not true. I actually think the third edition social system is pretty good, actually. And that's why Essence's version is not too far off.
Mm-mm.
It's just more interested in narrowing the choices you make, because
Right.
completely open-ended choices are hard.
Yep.
So rather than have to decide at character creation the thing that defines your character, because I don't know about you, but I barely know a character when I make them.
Yep. Same.
And they're going to change, and I'm going to get to know this character in the process of everyone else getting to know the character, so I don't know when I build a character usually what defines them.
Right.
Like, the character I'm playing in my current Exalted game, I thought was going to be, like, dead serious and, like, the straight man and sort of the organizer of the Suicide Squad, and he is a wisecracking scoundrel. That is not at all where I started. Like, I said something snappy and funny in the first session, I think, and then that just sort of became a personality trait that persisted throughout the rest of the game. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes a character just takes on a life of their own, and I think the process of discovery of a character is one of the most delightful things about playing an RPG. But some people are different, that's just me. But by replacing the defining intimacy, you have these cool 7 preset guiding principles, basically, which is what virtues are. And then there's rules for you can change these at any time.
Right.
Like if you realize that your character is not actually discipline and justice like you thought when you made them, they're actually courage and compassion almost a year later, you can change that. And you can change your defining intimacy too, but because it's less open-ended, it's easier to deal with. And you just pick 2 of them, and you have these 2 things that sort of define who you are, and then they provide the umbrella under which you define all your other intimacies, which are still open-ended, but they are now defined by these things. So if you are a discipline justice character, but you love your wife, maybe that is a sense of devotion to her under discipline, right? Or a desire to protect her and the place she lives under justice, right? And so that by adding more makes it easier for people to define those things, thus streamlining.
Right.
by adding more, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, streamline doesn't mean remove all stuff.
Yeah, I think people sometimes think that streamlining means cut everything down to 1 roll, never roll at all, do not pass go, just turn this into a BOB game, the end.
Yeah,
right?
which is not what we mean by saying streamline. I mean, sometimes it's cut out some subsystems because those subsystems are getting in the way. Sometimes it means change a subsystem to be more defined, which means it looks like it has more rules so that it makes more sense or is easier for people to cognitively get a handle on. And that's a big thing when it comes to making games and designing a game that feels streamlined to begin with, is how much cognitive load is it to engage with this mechanic?
Mm-hmm.
And when you're engaging with this mechanic, how hard is it to parse what the results of the mechanic are? So streamlining is keeping those things lower.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good definition. I like that. And I think that that definitional framework of how hard it is to parse the mechanic is a good metric for determining when a system is smooth enough, right? Like,
right.
What did I say? Lady Blackbird doesn't need streamlining because all the mechanics in Lady Blackbird are very easy to parse.
Right.
It's doing what it's meant to do. Leave it alone. Like, I read Sleepaway. I haven't played it yet. I really want to. But, like, the belonging outside belonging, at least just reading it, I was just like, no, this is doing exactly what it wanted to. These mechanics are very easy to parse. I don't know that I would cut it down. Maybe change the framing if I were writing something specific, but that's, like, what you're supposed to do with narrative tools, so...
Sure, yeah.
That's not really That's not really streamlining or house ruling, that's like using the tool as intended, so. Yeah. I don't know that I have any more to add, do you?
Not really. I think we've hit our dive pretty deeply.
We did dive pretty deep. And we recorded content that is different from one version to the other. Dee.
Yes.
Where can we find you on the internet?
Under a rock.
Yeah.
I am Impernious on Twitter. I am PERNIOUS. Yeah, I know it's weird. Don't worry about it. I am also at daniellelozon.com, where you can find my Twitter or my Facebook and things like that. You can also contact me. I have a contact page on my website. I'm also sometimes in the BXP Discord hanging out. So if you join the Discord, you can find me there.
Okay. You can find me. I am on Twitter at @ZenithSun. I am also on Tumblr. I am Dice-Wizard. You can feel free to follow me there. You can find the show at bxpcast.com, part of the Misdirected Mark Network, and if you want to shoot us an email with your thoughts on things or systems you'd love to see streamlined or how wrong I am about The Witcher, you can send us a message at bonusexpcast@gmail.com or add us on Twitter at bonusexpcast. And if you're really interested in joining the Discord, that you can find tinyurl.com/bxpdiscord will take you right there. Pop on in, join us, introduce yourself. We'd be happy to have you. Oh, I think that's everything.
Yeah.
All right. Everybody get out. Let's go. I'm done. It's dinner time. I gotta go.
Go away.
Goodbye. Change it if you want to.
Do I have to do this? Ugh, fine. Bonus Experience is written and produced by Monica and Ray, and this episode features special guest Danielle. And edited by Margaret. Our logo and art is by Nino Studios. Find her on Facebook and Instagram. Our theme song is Reuse Noise with the Light by CDK, and is used under the Attribution Non-Commercial Creative Commons license. BXP is part of the Misdirected Mark Network. Ugh, I'm not reading this. Fuck it. Bye.